All right, everybody, welcome back to Candace Live. A lot going on because we're getting closer and closer to November. Well, Trump was interviewed by the National Association of Black Journalists. By the way, who knew that we had that? Why do we need a National Association of Black Journalists? Why not just journalists? I don't know. Am I crazy? Anyways, he was excellent. The media is big mad because he said kind of what we're all thinking, which is, when did Kamala Harris turn black? Plus, later on in the show, I'm going to speak to you guys about Ballerina Farm, you know, that Instagram account, the trad wife that everybody's inspired by. Well, she made the mistake of opening herself to a leftist journalist who unsurprisingly hates Hannah's life and thinks that she is being held captive by marriage and babies. And Hannah has now issued a response, and I'm going to give my response to her response and the journalist. Big story. We'll be covering it. But first, we got to talk about Israel because, I don't know, the media insists that we talk about Israel and that we support Israel. Well, we all heard the rumors that the Palestinian detainees, now when I say detainees, I mean people that have not been arrested or tried or gone through the court system. They're simply being held, presumably for questioning. Well, we heard the rumors that they were being subjected to torture and that they were being subjected to rape. And it turns out that those rumors are true. And so I'm just going to wait for all of my fellow Christian podcasters and politicians to condemn this, to come out and condemn this. Why do I feel like I'm going to be waiting for a very long time? Why is that? Let's talk about it. That's what's coming up on Candace. Man, oh man, I know I'm already going to be in a lot of trouble for this episode, mainly because everybody in the media knows, and I said this at my previous job, that you have to be radically pro-Israel, and if not, they're going to come for your entire life and try to get you fired and then applaud for getting you fired and simultaneously insist that it's because they're victims, I guess, or something. Anyways, so I have just been struck by this very special relationship between America and Israel, where we're supposed to be conservatives, we're supposed to be pro-life. Many of us are supposed to be Christians. You know, some people say they're conservative and they're not Christian. Okay, fine. But those of us who say that we are should be Christians in every single scenario. And the demand, like I said, is that every time anything happens over in Israel, that everybody uses their platform to speak out. You recall this, by the way, when Piers Morgan, in that hour-and-a-half long interview that he did with me, was like, why didn't you instantly send a tweet on October 7th condemning what happened? And I said to him, well, not only did I condemn it multiple times on my show, but also why am I required to, within 5 seconds, issue a statement on my Twitter feed simply because I'm Christian? And I asked him, you know, tons of stuff going on with Christians right now in the world. Pick a country, pick a city, pick a place, Nigeria, Canada, churches being burned to the ground. Do you ask the same question of Jewish commentators and Jewish conservatives when something happens in Nigeria? Do you ask them those same questions about Armenia? And then he was very happy to move on because, of course, he does not. So, yeah, we've seen these videos. They've been horrific, of children being killed, murdered by bombs in Palestine. We've seen multiple videos of Christian churches being bombed and obliterated. We're told there is a tunnel under every single one of them. And so the only way, I guess, to get to these tunnels or to obstruct these tunnels is to bomb these things to oblivion. And we're simultaneously being told that if you have an issue with that, if you have an issue with children, innocent children being killed, then you're pro-Hamas, which is a nonsense. And then we started hearing the reports of people that were just being rounded up and detained and were being tortured, and we were being told that that's not true. That was Hamas propaganda, even though Israeli publications had confirmed that. So I want to show you this guy's tweet first and foremost. This is, I'm going to scroll down to this here. His name, and I hope I'm saying it right, I'm probably not, is Shail Ben Ephraim. He is the host of History of the Land of Israel podcast. He's a freelance writer and he's an editor, and he is extremely Zionist, extremely pro-Israel. And I guess he kind of got to the moment where he couldn't do the thing anymore. And the thing that I'm talking about is continually lying or pretending that you're blind to what is happening, okay? And he wrote this. He wrote, I feel stupid and ashamed. In May, an expose came out on CNN detailing the abuses of Taiman. This is a prison that's in Israel. Then the New York Times released their own article on it. Both were backed up with Israeli sources, crossed with Palestinian ones. I dismissed them because my government sources and Israeli media denied them. My whole life, I was told that the international media was out to get to Israel, that they were all anti-Semites. But today I realized how much I was lied to by my country, by my friends, by my media. Today, many of the people I talked to who denied these allegations admitted that they were true. And the worst part, none of this is coming to light because the IDF and government have changed their hearts about it. It's coming out because the pressure from the UK, the ICC, and the ICJ was getting too great to ignore. This would get Netanyahu and the chief of staff in serious trouble. So they finally said the truth, that Israel is routinely torturing inmates, that sexual abuse is fairly common there, that people have been tortured to death. Worst of all, many of the people in this facility were innocent, rounded up by accident, but there was no real verification process before they were subjected to this hell on earth. This can't go on. How does that make you feel? For me, it lets me know that there is, of course, a level which can be reached where some people decide, I'm no longer going to abandon my humanity. I'm no longer going to see this as whether or not this is an Israeli or a Palestinian. I'm just going to say that wrong is wrong is wrong. That's it. Doesn't matter. I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what your ethnicity is. It is wrong for people that are being detained to be raped, to be sodomized. And that is exactly what is happening. And the story that he is giving you is accurate. Like I said initially, we had heard this because the UN Human Rights Office had issued a report alleging that the detainees that were being held by Israel since October 7th had been subjected to torture, which included waterboarding, sleep deprivation, electric shocks, the release of dogs. Remember that? People were speaking about the dogs that are being released on them and other forms of mistreatment. And again, it became too much for them not to admit that it happened, and so they then arrested, the IDF court arrested 8 reserve soldiers that were suspected of the serious sexual abuse of the Palestinian detainee. And so what happened thereafter, according to the IDF, the soldiers were suspected of aggravated sodomy. It's a charge that is equivalent to rape, causing bodily harm under aggravated circumstances, abuse under aggravated circumstances, and conduct that is unbecoming of a soldier. Some of the suspects were also suspected of assault and interfering with the work of public servants. Like I said, this investigation really was only launched after enough pressure was mounted on the outside, not because I just thought this was like the morally wrong thing to be happening to a detainee. And so I'm just wondering, like, where's the Christian crowd? Because you do hear this a lot. You hear people that just sound like robots. They all say the same thing. It's not thoughtful, right? It's, you know, Israel is our closest ally. Israel will forever be our ally. That's a nonsense, stupid statement to make about any country in the world. Okay. I stan the UK. My husband is from the UK. I would be such an idiot to ever utter the phrase, the UK will always be our friend and ally, because it could change. The UK could bomb us. I hope they stay allies with us, but of course I'm not going to make that statement unless I've been conditioned to make those sorts of statements, or unless I feel compelled to make those sorts of statements. It's foolish, right? Israel has the most moral army in the world. Does that sound moral to you? These people are too much of robots. Not going to go back on it because many of them are in politics and they know the consequence of saying anything against the state of Israel. We have so much national sovereignty that you have people who have platforms, people that are earning millions of dollars per year, who refuse to condemn something as morally outrageous as sodomizing people who have not even had charges brought against them. They can't do it, okay, because they're cowards. I'm not for that anymore because I want to be a real Christian. I want to be a real Christian. I don't want to be a fake Christian. I want to be a Christian until. And part of what led me to this moment, gratefully actually, was recognizing that so many people who I felt that I came up with in politics did not have this moral clarity, could definitely say, because it is true, that it is wrong when innocent Israeli children, innocent Israeli citizens are killed, are murdered, rather, are subjected to terrorism. But they couldn't say it about Palestinians. And I thought, what is that? And someone told me that's Christian Zionism. That's what they have more of an allegiance to Israel. Israel can do anything that Israel wants to do. And they believe that their Bible tells them that God will bless those who bless Israel. And it doesn't matter what Israel does. And Israel's done a lot, by the way. Let's not even get into like the USS Liberty, which being from Israel means that you never have to say you're sorry, even when you murder American civilians, okay? I guess the CIA is never going to declassify those arguments that the Israeli Prime Minister Ben Gurion was having with JFK before he was shot. So we don't even have to ask that question because that's our friend and our ally. And so we shouldn't ask any questions about anything that they do whatsoever. You know, I mean, Israel's been involved in so much, and yet we're not allowed to ever say anything other than that's our best friend and ally, with a figurative and sometimes a literal gun to our heads. And I'm getting pretty tired of it, because what is Christian Zionism? What in your Bible tells you that we give billions of dollars to this country and they won't even give us back our pedophiles? What am I talking about? Do you not know this? You should look this up. And maybe, Skylar, you can pull it up in time while we're live. There was an amazing Jewish organization in America who hunted down, they have this policy that if you commit a crime in America and then you flee to Israel, they won't allow America to extradite you back. And so you had a ton of people, a lot of pedophiles, men who were raping and sodomizing children, okay? But fortunately for them, because they could flee to Israel, they would never get extradited for their crimes. And so there's a Jewish organization that did an in-depth piece on this, an in-depth investigation into this, and they followed them. They went over to Israel and they hunted these people down. And they said, this is ridiculous. Why are we not bringing back these pedophiles to face trial in America? No answer. No answer. I guess because they're our friend and ally, they are allowed to protect pedophiles from being extradited back to America to face charges for what they did to children. That's what it means. And we have to give them money. But for that, by the way, he would think, if I give you $1 billion, you're definitely going to back my criminals. Nope, doesn't work like that. And if you have an issue with that, well, you know how it goes, you're an anti-Semite. That's it. If you want the pedophiles to be required to face the charges and be brought back from Israel, you're an anti-Semite. That's what I'm hearing. Again, what is Christian Zionism? Okay. What is dispensationalism? What is it that these people believe? And so when I started doing the research, I went, aha, there is this thing called the Scofield Bible. Most people don't know because you're raised, you go to church, you go to Baptist church from the South, and you read the Bible, and the Bible's got notations, and then you have a pastor who's telling you what all of these verses mean, the King James Bible, and this is what this verse means, and take it to the bank. And you never stop and ask yourself, well, who made these notations? What inspired Scofield to make these notations? Of course, right when I had it on my heart to start speaking about this particular Bible, and it's taken me a lot of time because I don't wish to offend other Christians. I don't wish to offend the people who really a large part of everything that I've been through in this pull that brought me back to the Catholic faith. I owe a large part of my career to so many Christians around the world who have supported me from the very beginning. And so I've struggled with how to have this conversation, and I realized that there is no right moment to tell people the truth. And of course, at the moment that I made up my mind to tell people the truth, I then saw that Tucker Carlson had on John Rich, the country artist John Rich, and believe it or not, just a couple of weeks ago, they were talking about the Scofield Bible. Take a listen.
Have you ever heard of a Scofield Bible?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So C.I. Scofield was basically a student of John Darby, and he adopted that part of the doctrine, and he incorporated that into the Bible. It was the first Bible ever made that had study notes with it. We have all kinds of Bibles now that have, you know, concordances and study notes and all kinds of stuff that go along, but this was the first one that was ever made. It became so popular. Every Christian was reading it. Every minister was reading it. And this continues today, to this exact second. My own dad, when he went in seminary and was, you know, wanting to become a minister, they said, make sure you have a Scofield Bible now when you come to class. Have your Scofield Bible. Scofield Bible also adopted that entire John Darby philosophy of Christians will not be here when the bad stuff starts to happen. And most Christians still believe that. Matter of fact, a lot of my friends that are Christians are going to watch this interview are probably right now going, hang on a minute. Now hang on. So this is pushing back against a doctrine that's been in existence now for coming up on 200 years. The problem with that doctrine is there's several places in the Bible where it talks about what's going to happen prior to Jesus Christ coming back to the earth. When he does come back, that is when what we call the rapture happens. The word rapture is nowhere in the Bible. It talks about us being caught up with him and pulled out of here, and then the ultimate wrath is poured out on this planet. That's what we call the rapture. So that's not in debate. The question is, what happens leading up to that? It's a good question to ask, right? For some reason, nobody ever preaches that. They don't want to talk about what all happens prior to it. So if I can I just read if we have time? That's why I love the thought of this interview.
I do too. But just to be clear, what you're saying is the Scofield Bible, its theology is deceptive.
I'm saying that the same way the media takes a factual situation and twists it and gives you a version of it, which we all know we're force-fed every single day, the same exact tactic was used in 1830 by John Darby. And guess who he was connected to, by the way? The Rothschilds.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was connected to the Rothschilds family back in the day. That he did the same exact tactic and twisted that. I don't know why he did that. It worked because it took off. And I mean, there were churches popping up everywhere right after that. I'm saying that, including me, including my own father, for a long time, that's what we believe too. But when you start actually going back and reading line by line by line what is said that will be leading up to Jesus coming back, which is when the rapture happens, it's the inverse of what John Darby put down.
I didn't know that, but somehow I'm not surprised even a little bit.
And there's more, by the way. There's actually a lot more, and I'm grateful that John said all of this publicly, and I'm definitely going to have him on the show to talk about this at length. And he said a lot of important things there. So what happened is, like I've said to you many times, history is just being erased second by second. You guys have no concept of what was happening in this country in the early 19th century. I had no concept, by the way. I don't even want to speak to you as if I'm so educated that I know more than you, because I thought all the same things that everybody thought. I thought that what I was learning in church was real and was authentic and was the true history. And it really took when I was in study with a priest, actually, last year, and he looked up to me and he said, you Americans know nothing. You just know nothing. And he said, you don't even know that your country was founded by a bunch of Freemasons. Freemasons went there and they were battling for America, and someone won, right? One of the Freemason groups won America. And the truth of the matter is that the Catholic Church was approached by Zionists, and it was approached by Theodore Herzl in Italy. He went over, Theodore Herzl, the person that they credit with founding Israel, and he wanted the Catholic Church to support them taking over Israel. Now, this is before World War II, guys. We're talking about 1904. And the Catholic Church told Theodore Herzl to kick rocks. And that was a problem for the Christians. Were not going to support them taking over Israel. So they hatched up a plan. They said, well, if we can't get the Catholics to support us, we certainly can get the Protestants to support us. And they funded, and I'm referring to Zionists, funded the Scofield Bible. Scofield himself was actually a horrible man. He was drunk. There was the story that you hear about him coming to an aha moment. No, he left his wife and kids and basically somehow landed in Dallas, where he met some Freemasons. They introduced him to Sam Untermeyer, who's known, I guess, most notoriously for blackmailing Woodrow Wilson in order for him to have the Supreme Court Justice, Louis Brandeis. He's basically said he blackmailed Woodrow Wilson to get Louis Brandeis the Supreme Court nomination. And Samuel Untermeyer allowed this guy, Scofield, entry into the Lotus Club. Lotus Club was a remarkably Jewish club in New York City. The majority of the club was Jewish people supporting the Zionist cause. Out of nowhere, this poor guy, this poor pastor, suddenly has enough money to go be funded overseas, and he meets their friends who are running the Oxford University Press, and they give him a book deal before the book is even written. And he's going to do notations on a Bible. And then he spent some time in Switzerland at the same time that the Zionist Congress was held in Switzerland. And suddenly, it took him just a couple of years after shaking hands with the Oxford University Press, a man that had no experience, he wasn't even a university grad, had no professional background, gets a book deal so massive that suddenly they begin printing this Bible, which featured, just as John Rich said, notations. I'm supposed to believe Schofield wrote that. How long would it take you if you had to put notes for every verse in the Bible? How quickly could you do that? It's amazing how quickly he did it. And suddenly, because it was funded by Zionists, it became a Bible that was the most massive in print. That's the story of the Schofield Bible. That's the real hidden story of the Schofield Bible. John Rich is not lying. I've never spoken to John Rich about this. And I am not lying to you, okay? I am not lying to you. And what they decided to do there was to boil the frog, was to take the King James version of the Bible and to essentially just put notations of how people should read. Just a word removed here, a word removed there. And the next thing you know, guys, you wouldn't believe this, but Christian Zionism was born. That's it. That's the truth. That is the reality. That is how Christian Zionism was born in America. It is credited with the Schofield Bible. And that is a problem for me. It's a problem for me when I look up and I see people who I know are wonderful people, who I know love the Lord, and who stop themselves short, who will argue pro-life all day, but will stop themselves if the matter pertains to Israel. I now make the joke that, I mean, quite literally, I think Israel could do anything. I mean, anything. And Christian Zionists would just say, oh, but God will bless those who bless Israel. I mean, look at this article. I'm showing you this article, by the way. They just were able to pull it up here. It was in CBS News, pertaining to the pedophiles. Do you have that to pull up, guys? Oh, you have the info here. Yeah, about in CBS News about how we are not allowed to get back our pedophiles. And if you speak to a Christian Zionist, they will not say anything about that. And so I wanted to open that discussion because there are a lot of reasons that the Catholic Church decided not to support Israel becoming a state. And again, this predates World War I and predates World War II. And there was a lot of reasons that I feel that the Catholic Church has been holding the candle in every single way, holding the candles, holding on to history, and inviting Christians to learn about their own history, inviting Christians to learn even about how Israel became a state, because the wheels were set in motion long before World War II, okay? The wheels were set in motion by Moses Montefiore and James Churchill back in 1840, after a Catholic father went missing, okay, in Damascus. That is the reality. That is just the truth. And if I have to be the only person who has a platform with the courage to say it, then so be it, okay? I don't serve politicians. I don't serve AIPAC. I don't serve money. It is a sin to have that perspective, to be fearful of bad headlines. And it makes me call into question, do you really believe in Christianity? Like, do you really submit yourself to Christ? If all you care about is the moment now, the money, the good headlines, if all you care about is the job and the career, then it sounds to me like all you believe in is this life. It's just not who I could be. I could just never be that person. And I don't care what I have to lose. I think you guys have probably figured that in the process, because what is happening right now in Israel and what has happened in Israel in the past has been wrong. All right, guys, on that note, as we talk about the topic of life and the preservation of life, I do want to thank you. I saw some of you guys tagging me who are now drinking 7 Weeks coffee, and they are an amazing company that aligns perfectly with our mission as conservatives and as Christians. As I told you guys, it's a pro-life coffee company. They're on a mission to fund the pro-life movement, 1 cup of coffee at a time. And why do they use the name 7 Weeks? Well, at 7 weeks of development, a baby is the size of a coffee bean, and it's the first time a heartbeat is clearly detected on an ultrasound. That's why they donate 10% of every sale to support ultrasound services at pregnancy care centers across the country. And I can tell you about the coffee. It's the best I've ever had. I am very picky about what I put in my body, and this coffee checks all the boxes. It's mold-free, pesticide-free, shade-grown, low acidic, and organically farmed. Plus, it comes from the top 1% to 2% of beans in the world. So here's what you need to know. 7 Weeks Coffee is launching an exciting new initiative called Drink More Coffee, Save More Lives. Exclusively for my listeners, when you subscribe, you will save 15% and get a free Drink Coffee, Save Lives tote on your first order. That's not all. Exclusively for my audience, use code Candace and you'll save an additional 10%, giving you a total of 25% savings on your first order. So go to 7weekscoffee.com and use code Candace to save up to 25% off. All right, guys, now let's move on to, I guess, happier news. Because I thought I was happy when I saw Trump doing this. I just love honesty. That's where I'm at right now in my life, is I just want to be honest. And I can't tell you, I know you guys have been commenting, Candace, like, you look so happy, you look so free. Yes, I do. I feel so free because I just don't care anymore. I'm like, I am serving the Lord. I'm going to tell the truth. When I get it wrong, I'm going to apologize. And that's it. That is it. And I love when people are radically honest. And I loved that when Trump, and you just knew about the setup here, right? It's like he gets the call, you know, the National Association of Black Journalists. He probably was like, I didn't know there was one, because I didn't know there was one either. I think we just need a National Association of Journalists, but whatever. We are a culture where we're just identity everywhere. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it, of course, because this is a good thing. I've done so much. I feel, he probably feels this way, for Black Americans. They were obviously living better under me, so I want to communicate to them. And of course, it's a setup. It is always a setup. You know, they're going to do the typical, well, our girl Kamala, we like her better. So anyways, let me just show you a clip of the instant setup, the first question that was asked of Trump and how he responded, because it's beautiful. Take a listen.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe Black district attorneys. You've attacked Black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking Black supporters to vote for you, why should Black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner, a first question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina.
We can get out of this.
Which is one of the greatest programs.
I just love it. I just love it. Honestly, the only thing that could have been better if he just looked at her and said, yeah. She's like, you called Black journalists losers and you called them rude. If he just looked at her and said, you are a rude loser. And what I love about this is that he treats everybody equally, right? He doesn't care. It doesn't matter if you're a Black journalist asking a question, if you're a Spanish journalist asking a question. If you are trying to set him up and you're acting like a loser, he's going to call you out on that. Like I have said, you know, this is why I absolutely love Thomas Sowell, is that he says that so many people have gotten used to special treatment, so used to special treatment that when they are treated the same, it feels like discrimination to them, right? So they feel discriminated by Trump because they have been treated special. Like, you're a Black journalist, so you're in this category where nobody can say anything offensive to you. In fact, you can just offend them. And that's what she's doing. She's offending him, right? She's trying to pretend that she's being a journalist. She's not. She's an activist. And she's, in so many words, accusing him of being a racist by pointing out what he has said to Black people and not pointing out that he has said so much more and likely much worse to white journalists, right? So she's just trying to curate her audience to see everything as a token of the discrimination that's going on. And I love that he remains the same, right? There's no Black scent there. He's not trying to make the room like him by relating to them and dropping some hip hop bars. He's just like, yeah, and you're a loser too. You're rude. I'm here. I made the time for you. Don't treat me like this. And that is the Trump that I love. I really do. That is what I liked about him, is that no matter who he's in front of, he is still the same Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, I tend to love that version of him. And it gets even better because then she asks about Kamala Harris and Barack Obama. And it went, I would say, better than expected. Take a listen.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black
I
woman. She went to a
respect
historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't. Because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you
And
believe that
I think
she is
somebody should look into that, too, when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
I just love the way he says black. He's just great. I mean, come on. And this is what I mean, where I'm just like, I hate how leftism has turned black people into something that we're not. Like, we know that's funny, okay? We know that is hilarious. Is she Indian or is she black? You know, I've known her as an Indian woman. Now she's black. I don't know. It's fine both either way, but is she black or is she Indian? Like, that's objectively funny. And it's the same question that we're all asking ourselves, which is like, who is this girl mimicking? Now she's like Kamala from the block. Nobody recognizes this Kamala. And like I said, throughout her entire political career, she was very content using the Indian card, wearing a sari, I think that's what it's called. And yeah. And suddenly, I don't know, she just was like, no, girl, I'm definitely black, and starts dropping these phrases. So we should be, and we should feel insulted by Kamala and not Trump, because he's keeping it 100, okay? The Trump that's in that room is a Trump that's in a room filled with white people, black people, mixed people. That is what I demand out of any politician. That is that for me. I just want to know that you are going to speak the same. I was thinking about it, how weird it would have been if Vivek tried to speak in a black accent, because, you know, I love Vivek. I'm a massive supporter of him. I'm a massive fan of his. And I stumped with him for a bit in Iowa. And I would have just thought it was the strangest thing if when Vivek met me, he just dropped a black accent. I'm actually going to require Vivek, because I'm friends with him, to speak to me in a black accent. Like, I want to hear Vivek speak like Kamala, and him, just imagine Vivek being like, girl, in these streets. Yeah, no, he would never do that. And Kamala should never do that. And I love that Trump is just willing to call that out. And like I said, that's the version of Trump that gets him the most votes, when he just treats people as they deserve to be treated. Now, we all know what she actually is, obviously, is her parents were Marxists. Kamala is a Marxist. If she is voted in on the basis of the color of her skin, well, maybe black people should talk to Cubans and ask them about how Marxism works out. Talk to the Venezuelans right now and everything that they have gone through since socialism was implemented, because that is kind of the master plan for America, is to transform it into a socialist country. We're inching ever closer, which is why I want to thank my next sponsor of this show, Tuttle Twins. You guys know that I absolutely love these books. Sorry for the noise. I just realized my phone is on top of it. But they are just kind of this company that's really just reaching out to children, trying to teach them all of these concepts that seem too big. You can explain these to a child, and we need to make sure that Marxist ideas are not saturating our society, because they are already in the school and in the media, and they're influencing our impressionable kids, which is clearly the objective. The Tuttle Twins have a brand new book entitled the 14th in their series, called The Tuttle Twins and the Medals of Merit. Ethan and Emily Tuttle encounter strange new rules at their track and field meet that put the strongest athletes at a disadvantage, allowing less skilled athletes to win all the medals. You know how much I love Thomas Sowell. Well, he makes an appearance in the book to teach the twins about the philosophy of Marxism, which is the reason that you should definitely go buy this book. He tells them why it does not work, Marxism, what it looks like in our day, and how we can help stop it from infecting our society. This little character, by the way, is named Candace. Right now, you can get all 14 books, including the Medals of Merit, for a special deal at TuttleTwins.com/Candace. The discount for my viewers will be applied at checkout, and you'll pay only $85 for over 750 fully illustrated pages. So please go support them, support your kids, and support the Candace Show. Place your order at TuttleTwins.com/Candace. All right, guys, we got to talk about Ballerina Farm. So I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're starting to put the pieces together, right? And you're recognizing that everything that's happening, especially because we talked about Frankism, what they actually believed in, which was basically an inversion of the Catholic faith. They hated Catholics, and they wanted to destroy the, Catholic, just so you guys know, it means universal. They wanted to destroy the universal Christian church. And if you're going to try to twist and put everything on the Bible on its head, then you recognize that you have to destroy the family. That is a Marxist principle. And so I was actually quite shocked that Ballerina Farm was operating kind of under the radar. So if you guys don't know who she is essentially this she was a ballerina. That's why it's called Ballerina Farm. And she left Juilliard, met her husband at Juilliard, and they decided to say goodbye to the city and go live on a farm. Look how cute they are. Look at this photo of them. They're adorable. Like, you can't hate these people. It's just not possible unless you're a leftist, unless you're a Marxist. And you go, I just see happiness. And because I see happiness, I must destroy it. Like, these are the villains of today. And the greatest villains, of course, are women who don't have children, don't have a family, which is why J.D. Vance was right. And I hope that he never apologizes for what he said about we don't want people that are cat ladies and spinsters running society, because they have a special kind of hatred in them. Like, women evil hits different. You know what I mean? Like, when women decide to go evil, it's like, it's just different. It's different. Like, they plot. That's the difference. Like cat versus dogs. When a dog does something wrong, it's like, oh, it's kind of like an accident. I don't know, but the women, they're like cats, just sit there and they're like, how can I destroy? By the way, I do love my cat who passed away a couple of years ago, but like, I would see her kind of stew, like, I'm upset with you, and I'm going to think about this for 3 days, how to ruin your life. And so we had this sort of old cat lady, but she was actually a young journalist, and her name was Meg Agnew, and she writes for the Times of UK. She's British. And she saw so much happiness on her Instagram feed, and she couldn't stand it. So she reached out like a journalist and probably was so nice in the emails. I've seen how these hit pieces go. It's why I never allow journalists in my home, because I think it's like a kind of rape. I'm not even trying to be dramatic. To allow a journalist into your home and you think everything's great and you were nice to them and you introduce them to your children, and then they go out and they just try to destroy your family. You're like, oh, it's an invasion, and the worst kind of invasion. So I don't do the whole like, oh, I'd love to come to your house. Nah, as what I tell journalists, you're not allowed. You're not meeting a kid. You're not going to have a glass of water. I know an evil cat lady when I see one. Okay. And Meg, she's still young, but that's where she's headed right now. So anyways, Ballerina Farm invites her. They all think the interview goes well. And of course, this woman had basically already had the article written in her head. And her theme is like, women that are saying online that they're happy with their husbands and children, of course, must be suffering. I just have to find out how they're suffering. And she writes this article, and I'm just going to read you like bits of it, because it's almost comical, because it's just so obvious. By the way, I didn't tell you, Ballerina's Farm, her real name is Hannah Nealman, and her husband is Daniel Nealman. And the article, I'm just going to read a couple of lines here. Hannah takes the baby from her husband. She will not leave Nealman's chest for the 4 hours that we're together. Oh my God, the whole time, for 4 hours, Hannah Nealman held her baby. Dun, dun, dun. It gets worse. It gets worse. So she goes on and she talks about how there's other influential trad wives, namely one named Nara Smith, a 22-year-old Mormon model who has 4 million Instagram followers, who talks in a voice so soft, she sounds as though she has been brainwashed by a cult. Dun, dun, dun. And then she writes, many women I know who have and want a life that looks totally different are addicted to watching all of this, though others are served it by an algorithm as if it is grooming us into submission. Yeah, of course, we're being groomed by an algorithm to want marriage and kids. That can be the only reason why people are deciding on this lifestyle of Hannah Nealman's. So she says that she asks a question about whether or not they like the trad wife label. And this is what Hannah Nealman replied. We were already together. I'm sorry, this is what Daniel replied. We were already together doing what we were doing, Daniel replies instead. And then trad wife came along. We can't help it. This is what we are. If we're trad dad, trad wife, so be it. Nealman, however, thinks otherwise. Quote, I don't necessarily identify with it, she says, because we are traditional in the sense that it's a man and a woman. We have children, but I do feel like we're paving a lot of paths that haven't been paved before. So she's already making it seem like her and her husband disagree and that her husband is just interjecting his voice into this interview. She does this all throughout. But in reality, there was no question in my mind that when this woman reached out, she asked to interview them both. And so the husband and the wife showed up together. She's asking questions. They're both giving her answers. And they're not disagreeing. These two statements are not at conflict. He is saying, yeah, we're just married. We never really thought of us as trad wife, but if that's what people are calling it, so what? And she's saying, yeah, I don't identify with it. It's not an identity, but this is the life that we're living. There's actually no conflict between these two statements, but she continues down this narrative because she wanted to look like as though her husband is taking away Hannah Nealman's voice. She then quotes Hannah Nealman as speaking about her life when she was 17 years old as a ballerina dancer. She says, Quote, my goal was New York City. I left home at 17 and I was so excited to get there. I just loved that energy and I was going to be a ballerina. I was a good ballerina. She pauses again. But I knew that when I started to have my kids, my life would start to look different. She then goes on in the article to make it seem like, yeah, no, the little ballerina never got to become the lead nutcracker, because she decided to become a mom instead. And I just can't believe that she would do that. No, let me just assign some reality here. Everybody has dreams when they're 17 before they have kids. And then your dreams obviously take a shift and they shape in different ways. When I was 17, I wanted to be a journalist. I moved to New York City and I was like, I want to be a writer for a glossy magazine. I want to write for Glamour magazine. That was my ultimate dream. It is absurd to say, well, now that Candace is married with children, which is the best part of every single day. Well, clearly Candace Owens is suffering. She must be suffering because, you know, she's not writing for 2 cents an hour for Glamour magazine. It's no, her life became bigger. Her life became better. And then she has this quote about how he used and pulled some strings and got onto a plane at JetBlue. His father owns JetBlue. And they began their first date. And then she writes this, Hannah Nealman, our first few years of marriage were really hard. We sacrificed a lot, she says, but we did have this vision, this dream. And Daniel interrupts. We still do. What kind of sacrifices? I ask her. Well, I gave up dance, which was hard. You give up a piece of yourself, and Daniel gave up his career ambitions. Then the journalist writes, I look out at the vastness, and I don't totally agree. Daniel wanted to live in the great Western wild, so they did. He wanted to farm, so they do. He likes date nights once a week, so they go. They have a babysitter on those evenings. He didn't want nannies in the house, so there aren't any. The only space earmarked to be Nealman's own, a small barn she wanted to convert into a ballet studio, ended up becoming the kids' schoolroom. I mean, this just makes me sick. Like, she's never seen a functioning relationship. What she doesn't understand about marriage is two become one. My husband and I promise you, we have the same brain now. Like, we cut each other off because we finish each other's sentences. If anybody ever was allowed into my house, which I would never allow journalists into my house, and they sat down and they interviewed us, it would look exactly like this. Both of us speaking, both of us cutting each other off, because we don't view it as cutting each other off. We view it as completing one another. And unfortunately, with these radical feminists, they don't understand that. They have no idea how beautiful that is, how beautiful it is to have stepped into a vision where for two people to literally become one, for him to have career ambitions, for her to have ballet ambitions, and then for a larger vision, right? A God-like vision of family to lay before their feet, and for them to realize none of that would have mattered. None of it would have meant what we are doing now. None of it could have ever amounted to this fulfillment that we feel today. And she remarks about how tired she is. Yeah, parenting is exhausting, but it is a kind of exhaustion that you can't describe because it fills you with such gratitude and with such purpose. So I first want to let you listen to this journalist because she did some interviews thereafter, and you'll get exactly what kind of a person this is. Take a listen to her.
As women, this way of life has been missold to us previously, like, you know, the perfect, harmonious, happy domestic life of, aren't you so lucky to be able to stay home with your children and look after the house? There's this deep fear from lots of women that, oh my God, it's happening again. It's happening again, just in different clothing, and that clothing is social media and Instagram.
Do you think she's happy?
I do. I think there's been a lot of speculation online since. I think she's very tired. I think as is he. And what really struck me is just quite how little time that either of them have for themselves. But I suppose that is parenthood.
She supposes that must be parenthood. Oh, the concept of not living for me, and sharing your life with someone and coming into a completion and then having children. It scares her. You know, she's speaking, some women just see fear. They feel anxiety when they look online and they see a happy family, and they wonder to themselves, this must be some nasty algorithm that's trying to enslave me by telling me to get married and become happy with children. My gosh, what a terrible algorithm this is. It's unbelievable. They can't even recognize how demented they are, right? And she's demented, and it's not her own fault. I'm sure this journalist, Meg Agnew, is a nice woman. She's just been severely propagandized in the school system, and it won't be, and hopefully it won't become too late for her to recognize how much she is erring right now, right? That it's not an algorithm, that yes, it's exhausting, but like I said, it is so rewarding. And I want to lastly show you this because Hannah Nealman obviously was very upset and shocked. I don't know why she was shocked, but this is how the journalists are nowadays. They earn your trust. They will walk into your home and then they will lie about everything that happened, and they will invade you in this way. Like it does feel like an invasion, but she took to Instagram with a couple of notes just to clarify her own position. Take a listen.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a reporter come into our home to learn more about our family and business. We thought the interview went really well, very similar to the dozens of interviews we had done in recent memory. We were taken back, however, when we saw the printed article, which shocked us and shocked the world by being an attack on our family and my marriage, portraying me as oppressed, with my husband being the culprit. This couldn't be further from the truth. Nothing we said in the interview implied this conclusion, which leads me to believe the angle taken was predetermined. For Daniel and I, our priority in life is God and family. Everything else comes second. The greatest day of my life was when Daniel and I were married 13 years ago. Together we have built a business from scratch. We've brought 8 children into this world and have prioritized our marriage all along the way. We are co-parents, co-CEOs, co-diaper changers, kitchen cleaners, and decision makers. We are one, and I love him more today than I did 13 years ago. We have many dreams still to accomplish. We aren't done having babies. We are excited for our new farm store to open, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for the rest of it. But for now, I'm doing what I love most, being a mother, wife, a businesswoman, a farmer, a lover of...
All I can say is round of applause. Shout out to all the moms out there who are exhausted, like I'm exhausted, who have had kids back to back, like I've had kids back to back, and who finally get to see their lives being played out on Instagram, rather than women taking their clothes off, talking about feminism, talking about the thought life, pretending that they're happy as they sell their bodies for likes and clicks. They get to see a mom who is tired, but who is fulfilled. That you are all doing the Lord's work. And that is why when I was asked that question from Piers Morgan that day about who I look up to in Hollywood, I said my answer, and I meant it: stay-at-home moms, okay? Because you guys are doing the most important work, making sure that children are being raised in the right way, because they are the future. And the state does not like that. It is the state that controls these newspapers, that send out journalists to write hit pieces about moms because they're tired, okay? Yeah, we're tired. Big deal. That's their angle. And it's not going to matter, because it does feel like, exactly like she said, like it's God time. I don't know, guys. I just feel it. I'm feeling the Holy Spirit. It is just God time. And if you're going to stand against it, I don't think you're, you should probably change your minds and get on the right team. That's all I'm going to say. All right, guys, I before I answer some of your questions, and there are a lot of them, and I'm going to jump into these super chats, I do want to in finale thank Tax Network USA. I know many people who are overwhelmed with back taxes, and you're like, I'm just not going to think about it and hope the IRS doesn't arrest me for these unfiled returns. Well, guess what? They've hired, thank you, Biden, 20,000 new hires, okay? They've stepped up enforcement since the end of COVID relief programs. They get all this free money, and now they're going to hunt down Americans, and they're issuing millions of pay-up notices in 2024. So if you are listening to this and you're worried about the IRS collection tactics, there is no need to face them alone. Tax Network USA can help. Tax Networks USA is the nation's premier tax relief firm with a history of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for clients. They offer a range of services, including penalty forgiveness, hardship programs, where you might not have to repay anything until your tax debt expires. They even offer in-compromise solutions for lump sum settlements. So whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their team of experts is prepared to assist you. Handling IRS matters without professional help is extremely risky. So protect your financial security by seeking guidance from Tax Network USA. Their experts provide strategic advice on reducing or eliminating your tax debt. To schedule a complimentary consultation, call 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Candace. Do not let the IRS's aggressive tactics control your life. Empower yourself with Tax Network USA. Take charge of your financial future. Visit tnusa.com/Candace. usa.com/Candace. All right, guys, let's see what's going down in the chat. Dun, dun, dun. Be nice. Just be nice, everybody. Just kidding. You don't have to be nice. I can take it. Maggie writes, thank you for opening my eyes to what's going on in this country. I've been reading chaos, and it's crazy how much I didn't know. Thank you so much, Maggie. And I want to just thank all of you guys who are supporting the show and letting us know that we can tell the truth and be independent and not rely on corporate media on locals.com or CandaceOwens.com, or supporting by buying merch. Don't Care, Built Different, Conspiracy Theorists, all of you guys who have been supporting the show. It's the reason that I really do have this freedom. So thank you back to you. Brother Lex writes, Mrs. Owens, you're the business. We have huge love for you. Wish the best for you. Stay cool. Dane writes, Candace, thank you for being you. I'm so tired of all the conservative pods from Bongino to Kirk. They all pair up the same thing, kind of like the left. You are the only one who dares to step outside of the norm. Christ is king. Thank you so much. I obviously am friends with Dan Bongino, and I'm friends with Charlie Kirk, and I've gone through a lot with Charlie Kirk, and I pray for all of them to continue their success. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I pray for everyone who has a platform to continue their success and to commit themselves to the truth fully every day, no matter what the cost is. Tomahawk Elf writes, is it a correct assessment to claim that the historical institution of Catholicism is equally as bad or worse than your complaints and problems with Israel and Christian Zionism? No, I don't think that is fair at all to say. Well, first off, these are talking about three different things. Christian Zionism, in my view, because of learning the history of how it began, I think it is a fair question to ask whether or not it can be deemed a heresy. Catholicism, and I think the Orthodox faith, I pray every day that the schism is resolved. I genuinely do. Every Mass, I dedicate that just praying that the schism is resolved, because, like I said, I believe that they have held a candle up for the entire Christian faith and have just been waiting for people to open their eyes to history. And Israel is a place in the Middle East, so I obviously can't compare that to either. So we're talking about an idea, a faith, and a place. Mary Giles writes, research Somerset Belanoff, Countess of Branbury, owner of Bohemian Grove. Ooh, I like that tidbit, Mary. I shall do. Encrypt Lake Games writes, and people wonder why I have the Geneva Bible before they changed passages, like changing thou shalt not murder to kill, knowing killing and murder have two different meanings. I didn't know that was another thing that was changed. Thank you very much. But yeah, it was all small changes. This is known as boiling the frog. If you take a word here, word out here, a word out there, people won't notice and they'll think that it's all the same, and it very much was not. Lindsay Siedelman writes, God bless Candace. I firmly believe that praying the rosary will help anyone, just clears and guides our minds the right ways to pray for peace and how we can speak truth for God's children. Jordan writes, Candace, I love your content. If you ever run for president, I would literally vote for you. They would never let me run for president. I can't be friends with anybody right now because you're not allowed to talk about Israel other than, they're amazing and they do everything right. And if you do, you're not allowed to be in politics, except for Thomas Massey. He got in there and they hate him too. He's my guy. I would run if Thomas Massey would agree to run with me, but they'd probably kill us both. Lunar Bow writes, quick to interview and try to attack Trump, but don't care about the fact that Kamala's website doesn't list her platform and policies. That is correct. That is what they do. They don't care because it's tribal and they're like, okay, she's brownish, so I'm going to go with her. Viral Syndicate writes, Kendrick cooked Drake over this same rhetoric, pandering to Black people for their support, fake accents to fit in. But people say it is okay for Kamala. Yeah, I mean, Drake is an actor. That's his background. And yeah, he's rapping. But I would say there's a lot of performance that goes in, no matter whether you're a singer or you're on stage. So, drama class becomes Hollywood. I'm actually reading a book right now about Hollywood. It's called Hollywood Babylon. It's from the 1960s and it was banned. And I'm interested in it. Bree Rush writes, not that I don't trust what you're saying about the Bible, but could you please add links to your research? Yes, guys. Okay. I've said this 3 days in a row. And I know I just sound like a parrot at this point. I promise before this week concludes, probably today, maybe tomorrow, I'm going to put all of the links of everything that I've discussed this week because everyone needs these links to know that I'm not making it up off the top of my head. But yes, this is just the truth about the Schofield Bible. You can look up the Lotus Club origins. I think even still today, the Lotus Club is still in existence, and it was, and perhaps still is, a Zionist hub. But yeah, all of this is true, and I will provide you links, I promise. And I was very shocked to see that John Rich said that because, like I said, I hadn't talked to John Rich about that, so it's time to get him on the show. This person writes, with all due respect, and I mean it when you talk about the war on the Catholic faith, you forgot an entry, the German occupation of Poland during World War II and the mass repression and murder of Polish Catholics. Just so you know, I am never forgetting. There is so much that I don't know, and I hope that people sense that what I am is I'm curious and I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to be wrong, and I'm willing to apologize. I really come to you guys every single day with the utmost humility. That's why I don't even like to be like preachy about stuff, because I'm like, no, I didn't know this stuff either. And so when people say, oh, you didn't mention this, I'm not trying to not mention it. I just maybe truly did not know it. Bad Girl writes, Candace, you make me so proud to be a woman. Keep fighting the good fight. God bless you and your family. Rachel says we need a virtual book club. It's coming. Give me September. I'm rebuilding a whole website because I suspect that eventually I'm just going to get kicked out of life. Like, there's no journalists that like me anymore, and I'm going to get kicked out of life. So I'm going to have my own platform, and I'm working on it. I promise you. Lastly, I'm going to read Paige. Paige writes, please look up Whitney Webb and her 2-volume book, One Nation Under Blackmail. You will like it as much or even more than you did Chaos. Yeah, blackmail has been the name of the game for a very long time, and too often Israel is involved when we have blackmail situations. And like I said, half of the stuff that you find out about it's being written by Israelis. So that concept of referring to this as anti-Semitic is a joke, but it's all they have. It's all they have. It's just like, if you say something I don't like, I'm just going to call you anti-Semitic, and it simply is not right. All right, guys, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today, but don't you worry. We will be back tomorrow, and we will be talking about more topics that will offend people, and I'll get more headlines reminding me that I better get in line. But fortunately, I have you guys supporting me at Locals. I don't have a corporation or some other weird thing that I have to answer to. So head to locals.com to support the show, CandaceOwens.com to support the show. Get yourself some merch at clubcandace.com, because we are all now deemed conspiracy theorists because we are built different. Thanks, guys. Love you. I will see you tomorrow.